Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Right Fit Marriage Show, your one stop for tips to help you to succeed in marriage. I'm just going to hang around. Welcome, Samuel Babatunde Obafemi. You are the first listener today to the Right Fit Marriage Show. And I believe this is your first time as well. Thank you for joining the show. We'll just wait a while for one or two more people to join us and then we'll start. And while we do that, perhaps you want to share with your friends so they can also listen. Olaniyo, thank you for joining the show as well. Well, there's 3 of us now, so we'll just start right off. Last week, the show was not broadcast, and I apologize. I should have let you, my listeners, know that there would be no broadcast. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for joining me on today's show. Chadu and Noye, thank you as well for joining the show. This is the Right Fit Marriage Show, your one stop for tips to help you to succeed in marriage. I was in a conversation this morning on Facebook. In that conversation, somebody shared that they had attended pre-marriage counseling. At the time of the counseling, they naively thought that they would not fall victim to the many pitfalls that their counselors mentioned. You know, they said that, like many others have said, marriage is one institution where you are given a certificate on enrollment day. You know, in most other things that we do in life, it is after you have completed the course that you are given a certificate. And the certificate says this person has completed the course and is now proficient in this area. That's what most certificates read. But in marriage, you actually get given the certificate at the beginning of the journey. And many people really wonder whether this is a good thing. And in recent times, in order to prepare people, you know, we have all kinds of programs, marriage seminars, pre-marriage education, different kinds of names, books, and so on and so forth. And very often, as a marriage counselor, as a marriage educator, as a marriage coach, I get asked these questions. You know, people will say, Mommy Mo, our parents and grandparents, they didn't go through all this pre-marriage preparation, they didn't do any post-marriage counseling, they didn't have any marriage coach, and their marriages went well. Why do we have to do it at this time? Ayode John Obanjo, thank you as well for joining the show. So they asked me, why do we have to have marriage preparation? Why do we need to have marriage coaching? Are we not overflogging the issue? Are we not borrowing ideas from white people? You know, are we not bringing ideas that are foreign to our land? Is this not borrowed culture? All these questions, to me, they are valid questions. You know, they're really valid questions. If you're with me on the show, please let me know in the comments box. Did you go through any kind of pre-marriage preparation program? Or since you have been married, have you had to work with a marriage coach? Or have you had to work, you know, with a marriage counselor? Or do you know other people who have done that? If you do, please let me know in the comments box. But you know, when people ask me these questions, I actually tell them their questions are valid. Personally, I don't believe that you should just enroll for a program just because it is advertised or because people tell you to do. Every program that you participate in, you should actually find out what is this program about and why should I do it. But because of the number of people who ask me these questions, that's the reason why I decided to look at it in today's program. Why should we have formal pre-marriage preparations like the ones that the churches do? And I'm told that even the mosques now do marriage preparation. Why should a couple that is getting married talk to Mommy Mo, for example, at the Right Fit Marriage Academy? Why should they talk to any other marriage educator or counselor or coach? Why should people who are already married, why should they also talk to any marriage coach? My own parents, in another couple of weeks, they're going to celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary. And to the best of my knowledge, I'm their first child. So in the years that I've been wise and living with them, I've not seen them talk to any marriage counselor or marriage coach. And they have not attended any formal marriage academy. But their marriage has done well, I also remember that my parents-in-law, before they passed, they actually celebrated their 50th anniversary. And they also, to the best of my knowledge, they didn't attend any marriage course or any marriage academy or talk to a counselor. And I'm sure that those of you who are listening to me, you also know quite a number of couples around you whose marriages have lasted long and who didn't attend any formal marriage education programs. And so it's a valid question that people ask. Why should there be pre-marriage counseling? Why should there be post-marriage counseling? Why should anybody be interested in these marriage programs? I would like you, my dear listeners, please tell me in the comments box what your own opinion is, what you think the answers to these questions should be. Why should anybody be interested in these programs at all? While I wait for you to write what your own views and perspectives are, I'll start the discussion with what my own opinions are. This is 2018, modern times. But some 50, 60 years ago, or maybe longer than that, if you wanted to marry, if you wanted to get married, chances are the person you will choose to marry grew up in the same locality as you. Chances are that they had the same life exposures as you. Chances are that they lived in the same cultural tradition as you. We don't always appreciate what that means. We don't always understand what it means that 50, 60 years ago, people grew up in the same environment with the person that they wanted to marry. If you grew up with somebody in the same locality, if you had the same life exposures with the person, if both of you lived in the same culture and tradition, the first thing that results from that kind of relationship is that pretty much you and the person that you want to marry have been exposed to the same paradigms about life, the same paradigms about marriage. You and the person that you choose to marry, if both of you had that experience, it means that you have seen marriage modeled for you in similar ways. And so it would mean that your expectations about marriage, they're similar. Your expectations about life, they're similar. And so chances are that 50, 60 years ago, when a man and a woman decide to get married, conflict and misunderstandings in their marriage, the level of it is lower. It is lower because the life that they have experienced together before, the lives that they have experienced individually before they got married is not too different. And so when we are looking at our parents and we say, but they didn't do any pre-marriage program, they didn't do any post-marriage program, and their marriages did not have problems, their situations are a little bit different from our own. If you're just joining us, this is the Right Fit Marriage Show, your one stop for tips to help you to succeed in marriage. And I would like you to share the broadcast with others of your friends so that they also can listen to me and learn firsthand. So 50, 60 years ago, when people get married, the second thing that we don't always pay attention to is that much of their childhood, much of their adolescence was also spent with their parents. In addition to spending that time of their life with their parents, they also had other relatives and extended family members, uncles, aunties, cousins, and other relatives, People lived in villages or in communal societies. In those communal societies, there were structures, there were systems, there were processes. For example, some cultures have age grade. So once you belong to one age grade, everybody will know when you were born. And as you are growing, the community had a system in place for grooming you and preparing you for adulthood, for life, and for marriage. And so, even though 50, 60 years ago, there were no formal marriage training structures, the truth is that there were systems, there were structures, there were processes by which young men and women were instructed and they were prepared for life and for marriage. So when we look at our parents and our grandparents and we are saying they didn't attend any marriage counseling, they didn't attend any marriage seminar. Yes, they didn't attend marriage programs as we know them today. But in those times, there were structures, there were systems, and there were processes for grooming young men and women in the communal societies that we live in to prepare them for adult life and also to prepare them for marriage. There is a statement that women generally get annoyed about, Many young women, their mothers or their parents will be asking them, when they do certain things at home, they'll say, is this how you are going to do in your husband's house? Many people get offended about that statement, but actually, the origin of that statement is that it wasn't an insult or a rebuke. It was a statement that reflected the way by which people were groomed and prepared for marriage. What this means is that our parents and grandparents that we look at, they actually had preparation for marriage. And even after they got married, there were systems, there were structures, and there were processes in place for them. So they got post-wedding help and counseling. They did not call it names as we call them today, but those systems were there, those structures were there, those processes were there. Thank you for joining the show. Rita Aningo, Uduma, Just Ben, and Shegun Adaju, thank you for joining the Right Fit Marriage Show today. So the question we want to ask ourselves is, what is different now? What has happened to the structures and the systems that existed then, which our parents and our grandparents used? What we find is that in the present time, many parents and their children are living far away from the communal societies, the communal environments that we are talking about. A lot of us, the way we are living now, for many of us, the only people our children know and interact with regularly is just their parents, their father and their mother. Occasionally, maybe a relative will come and live. For many people, in the estates that they live in, they never even get to see their neighbors. Perhaps they may meet at resident association, but the interaction between them is very little. So many of us are living in situations where our young people are exposed only to the nuclear family. And then it means that as a young man and young woman, in their growing up years, they live only with their parents. Is what their parents know that their parents will teach them. It means that if there is anything that their parents do not know, those young men and women, they may not know it. If their parents are deficient in anything, they will not be able to learn in those areas. Now, this is not the only thing. The second thing that has happened to us is that many of the children now go to secondary school between the ages of 10 and 12. And their adolescent years, where if they had lived in the communal societies, is where they will be groomed. Those adolescent years, they now spend it in school, facing their academics. A significant proportion of their time is spent with their peers, instead of with adults who will model for them and who will teach them, who will prepare them, who will teach them life skills and the skills they need to do adulthood and marriage. So, where before there was a structure in the communal society by which young people were groomed and prepared for adulthood and were prepared also for marriage, now there is a vacuum. Thank you, Tunde Adekola, Dion, and Kobe. Thank you for joining the show. So there is a vacuum because in the formative years, when those life skills, those attitudes that should be taught to children to prepare them for adult life, that time is the time that the children are spending in school. Some of them in boarding house, spending a significant time away from the adults who should groom them and with their peers who are just starting life and who do not know much. So what it means is that our children, unlike our parents and grandparents, are actually growing up without any intentional grooming and preparation for adulthood and for marriage. It's not uncommon that it is when a young person is ready to marry that we will discover that they have not been groomed for marriage. This transition has happened to us. It's not a transition that we actually were conscious of. We didn't even notice that it was happening. It's when the challenges arising from that transition, when it began to be visible, that's when we started thinking about it. You know, the transition that happened, us moving away from communal societies, living as nuclear families, sending our children away to school in the years that they ought to be nurtured and groomed and prepared for adulthood. It is when the consequences of that transition began to be visible in our lives, that's when we started paying attention. So the situation we find ourselves in now is that it means that young people are either left to get married and then figure out things by themselves, or at the point that they decide that they want to get married, a program is put together for them to be groomed for marriage. So pre-marriage counseling, this is how it came about. It came about to fill a gap that unintentionally arose when we changed from living in communal societies to living as nuclear families. So this transition and the gap that it's created is the origin of pre-marriage counseling. It's also the origin of post-marriage, post-wedding counseling, because perhaps the young person is lucky. Somebody points out to them that they need to be prepared, so they go for some pre-marriage preparation. If they are not as lucky, after they get married and they hit upon the crisis point, somebody may advise them that they should go for post-wedding counseling or coaching. So this gap that arose from the transition that we are talking about, that's the reason why we need pre-marriage counseling or pre-marriage preparation or marriage education of any sort. Going to seminars, reading the books, going to programs, working with a coach. It's because, to a large extent, nobody consciously grooms young people for marriage. Yes, Oluwaseunwara, pre-marriage counseling. So you will agree with me that the marriage education programs that we have right now, the seminars, the church programs, the programs in the mosque, and so on and so forth, they came up because there was a gap that needed to be filled. But this evening, I want to say to you and me, we can take a step to make things better. What is this step that we can take? Are you a parent? Are you an adult? No matter how young your children are, they are eventually going to be adults and they will want to get married. The same applies to me. And it applies to many of us, even those who are not listening to this show today. So, when they want to get married, we have a choice. Do we want them to go into marriage and then figure things out by themselves when they get there? Or do we want to equip them and prepare them? Of course, we cannot live their life for them. There are traps that they're going to fall into that we could not have foreseen. But is it not better for them to be prepared in some way? That is the question that we want to ask. So instead of asking, is marriage education necessary? The question we should be asking ourselves is, what structures and processes are in place now to prepare young people for marriage? Are those structures good enough to help them to make informed choices? Are those structures good enough when they have made the choice of who to marry and they are marrying that person? Are those structures enough to equip them and prepare them to take on the responsibility of marriage and to bear it without us who are looking at them being afraid? It is the need to put these structures in place. It is the need to put these processes in place that has made me to set up the Right Fit Marriage Academy. It is the need for these structures that has caused many other people like me to begin to do pre-marriage counseling programs, to begin to do post-wedding consultations, because rather than allow our young people to be working with trial and error, we have put these programs in place. But we cannot do this work alone. We need you who is listening to me today. We need you too to also be an active participant in the process. We need for all of us to become students of marriage. We need for all of us to seek deeper understanding of the principles that make marriage work. We need all of us to rise up to the stage and ask ourselves, how do we create the kind of systems, the kind of structures, the kind of processes that will serve us so that, our young people will not be falling through the cracks. Our young people will be prepared. They will be taught life skills. They will have marriages modeled for them so that when they grow and it is time for them to get married, we will not be running helter-skelter looking for emergency programs for them. Whether you are already married, whether you are single and looking forward to be married, whether you are a parent whose children are still very young, all of us need to rise up together, join hands, and collectively put in place structures, systems, and processes that will groom our young people, equip them, and prepare them for adulthood and for marriage as well. Today's marriage quote tells us why we should do that. Here is the quote: marriage is a promise. A promise not just between the couple, but a promise to the community at large. A promise to generations that are past, and a promise to those who are yet to be born. When a man and woman stand and say, we are getting married, yes, it is about them. But no, it is not about them alone. How their marriage goes will determine how the community they live in grow. If there are many good, healthy marriages, the community will thrive. It will continue. The good traditions, the blessings that the older people have will be handed to the young people. The young people, when they begin to have their own children, they will be able to hand it on. And that is the way that the community will continue to thrive. But if a young man and a young woman get married and they think that the marriage, the promise they're making, concerns only them, and they don't pay attention, and they don't handle the marriage well, and they don't do things okay, one, they will be modeling for those who are coming after them that the community does not matter. There would also be no channel for us to pass on the good beliefs, the good traits, the good attitudes, the good habits that we want that our community will thrive on. And so I'm going to share that quote with you again. And if you want it after the broadcast, it is in the post that is accompanying this broadcast. Marriage is a promise, not just between the couple, but to the community at large, to the generations that are past, and to those that are yet to be born. This quote is taken from a website, heritage.org. So I'm going to close to this program to inviting you to say, will you join us and be part of the people who will put together the structures, the systems, the processes that will groom young people in our community, in our nation, and prepare them for adulthood and for marriage. I assure you, if you commit yourself to doing that, you are committing yourself to a good cause. And so, I want to thank all of you for joining me in today's program. Oluwakemi Jacobs, Chidimma Nene, Olufunke Samuel, Amarachi Ogueri, Oluwaseunwara, Oma Osi, thank you. Kobe K, thank everybody who who listened to this program. Tunde Adekola, Dion Obodo, Shegun Agdaju, Just Ben, Uduma, Rita Aningo, Ayodeji Onabanjo, and every other person who joined me in today's broadcast. Do me a favor. Share this broadcast with your friends and with your network. Let's get the right information and knowledge spread far and wide so that together we can actually make our community to be a livable place. We can make our community a place where when our young people become adults, we're not afraid of what is going to become of them. We can join hands together to make our community a place where we have channels for passing on traditions that are good, beliefs that are good, habits that are good. So that's why pre-marriage preparation is important. That's why post-wedding consultation is important. At the present times, where we don't have those structures and systems and processes, they fill the gap. They give the young people a place to go to and gather knowledge. As I close the show today, please tell people about the Right Fit Marriage Academy. It's a place that there is ongoing learning about marriage. And so here is today's quote again. Marriage is a promise, not just between a couple, but to the community at large, to generations that are past, and to those who are yet to be born. With this quote, we round up today's show. Next week, Thursday, same time at 7 p.m., is another date with me on the Right Fit Marriage Show, your one stop for tips to help you to succeed in marriage. Until next week, bye. Have a restful evening.